podcast.
Yes, and we're back. What's up, people? Welcome to Creator Theory Podcast, the show that brings you conversations with visual artists about how they got to where they got, what their day-to-day is like, their struggles, thoughts on the art world, and a lot more. Coming at you from Save on Radio, Vancouver, Canada, BC, Hastings Street. It's really sunny outside, so I feel especially lucky that I got this guest in here today because, man, we lately, actually no, we've been getting good days lately. Anyway, so this man in studio, Texture Supervisor at Industrial Light Magic, a man with a badass IMDb page. I suggest you look him up while we're doing this. He's currently working on Aladdin, I'm pretty sure, and just a great artist and a human being. Raine Anderson, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Like I said, thanks for taking the time, especially with the good days we get out there.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, I think you wrote it, that you've been in the industry for over 20 years now.
Yeah.
Damn,
yeah,
dude, we got a lot of experience in this room. So, but I wanted to ask you, do you think at this point you have your work-life balance and work process figured out? Is 20 years enough?
It's never enough.
No?
No. I think I'm just scratching the surface. That's for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess the more you know, the harder it is. Yeah, or the more you know, the more you want to know.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the way we should start is, I want to get into your story, but maybe first let's tell people what a Texture Supervisor, what does that look like a day in of Texture Soup?
Yeah, it's a little bit different in the sense of it really is kind of encompassing this interesting part of the discipline where one of my old supervisors, I love it, he just said that I just color for a living. And the simple term.
Oversimplifying it.
Yeah,
very
so
much so.
It's pretty much mostly deals with obviously all the visual effects movies or animation.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is we put on the materials and the skin, so you get your 3D sculpture, or for other people if you're just building in clay, that kind of idea where you just get this generally really nice model, and then what we do is we apply all the different techniques on to make it look like skin or make it look like metal or whatever, and the texture part is kind of the icing on the cake where we add all the textures, so the different bumps and colors and responses, but the Texture Supervisor, it's kind of changing. It's a lot of it is dealing with look development, so we're kind of its other terms are surfacing artists, because we're actually putting, essentially the surface on the character, the asset, whether it be robots or cars or human beings or whatever. But the interesting thing is it's kind of a bit of a mind fuck in a sense, like because what we're trying to do is where you have a traditional painter and you're understanding light situations and you're starting to add your chiaroscuro and all your different techniques, and what we're doing is we're looking at something and we're having to essentially deconstruct it and then re-put it back together again.
Yeah.
So we're having to look at, okay, you have your diffuse or your albedo color, you have specular, which specular is a made-up term.
Is it really?
Yeah. It is really like it became a computer term, so it really is just reflections. And what we're doing is we're taking reflections and we're calling it specular response, and then we're calling it, and then that breaks into spec roughness, which is
that reflection of light and how diffuse it is?
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it is kind of like a cheat, but it is still dealing with real world materials, and it's up to us, like whether we're, even if you look at when I was at Pixar, it's the same thing, that even though those things are very stylized, we're still dealing with very real world responses, like vinyl and different things. And as you work on it, you start to really, if you're fortunate enough and have the time to really start analyzing these things and then carrying it through. Like when I was working on the Toy Story short, I didn't realize that when vinyl gets scratched, it gets more shiny in the scratch, where I think it's just regular plastics actually get more dull. It's
wow.
The actual opposite. I can't really quite remember.
Yeah, Raine dropping big facts on us right away in the beginning. But so does this is so interesting. So does it make you see the world different?
I think I think it does. I mean, it's still the same thing as an illustrator or a painter. I think it's if you're concentrating on something, whether it be whatever movie, say if you like you're working in your watercolors, or you just decide to sketch and you're just you're sketching and you're concentrating on something for that time, then all of a sudden you walk outside and that's all you see. There's a time that all of a sudden you see things on how you might draw it. It's the same thing as going and working on stuff. Like when I was at Wet End, where I spent way too much time just working on plants for Avatar. And there's luckily when I was in New Zealand, there's this great little kind of coffee shop, and they have coffee shops attached to kind of garden centers.
It's a pretty good idea.
It's really cool, and I wish there would be more here. But then I would just go and get a coffee, and I would walk through and analyze the shit out of all the plants. So I know that the people that were working there must thought I was insane, because I'm just sitting there looking at this stuff, how light transfuses through, and you start getting really technical, but at the same time it's still very liberating when you can pull it off, and then if the viewer or whoever's watching it takes it for granted and doesn't think it looks fake, then you've done what you're supposed to do.
I've definitely done the same thing. I used to, for a while, when I wanted to paint some plants, I would go for a run and just stop every 2 minutes, because I'd be running by a cool plant. Stop, take a photo, keep going. Yeah. I guess that just shows you how little you notice in the world until you have to look at it, or until you think about it, and then it just
completely.
But I think what you said about it's similar to being an illustrator or an artist, I think, to a degree, but you're taking it to a next level, because you have to, like you said, you have to break it down and then build it together the way someone would look like, where I think and maybe that's the disconnect, where a 2D artist would create something, would draw something. You're making an impression, and because you're doing a one-off, it's a lot easier to get something to look the way it should, but you may not have to understand how it is done, how light reflects, where you can kind of, there can be a little bit of cheating and you can get away with it, where I think in your position and what you do, you really, you need to really understand how the materials and different layers and different maps. Well, I mean, in real life, there's no maps, but the way light, like you said, reflects and what the roughness of it to get something. So I think you have to take it the next step, which makes me, I think, appreciative of this kind of artist, especially if you take that knowledge and put it back into a 2D art. Yeah. Because then when you paint it, you really understand it.
Yeah, but it also messes with you a bit too, because I think it's sometimes, as any artist does, you overanalyze it and you start bringing it out. You get too technical instead of just letting the emotion come out a little bit more. You get a little tunnel visioned. I mean, it has helped me a lot, but because I started off in this industry modeling and rigging. I mean, back in the day, that's all we did is we had to do it all other than the animators are the animators, and if you're like I fall under the asset
generalist.
Yeah, the generalist kind of asset builder. And then it became very kind of singular disciplines, and now it's coming back to people starting to be able to do more. But I mean, we're really tied. I mean, it is very much a team effort. Very tied to the lighters who and those sequence leads that build out the HDRs that we need for the lighting, and how that reflect how we work with that. We're very tied to the modelers that build these great models, and also whether we do it like texture artists, we cross over, so we work with different digital sculpting tools like ZBrush and stuff, but so do the modelers. So it's or the digital sculptors, if you want to call them that. But we're very tied together, and that's what I find so interesting about this time in history is, back in the day when you're an artist, yes, you had an apprentice and maybe a couple of people, but it's such a weird thing with, as with production art, that it's, we have so many different people.
You have a machine now. Yeah. It's a beast.
So many different people, though, with their different personalities and trying to get some sort of singular idea out.
It's pretty amazing that it does happen, and I think it's all thanks to production coordinators, because before we started the show, Raine told me that ILM is around 500 people or something like that.
Vancouver end,
just in Vancouver. Imagine, rallying up 500 people to do something.
Yeah, I mean, production will make or break for sure. It's the artists are a bit of prima donnas and very very emotional people at times. So you definitely need those production. I mean, a good production team will save your ass for sure.
Since we're on the kind of this topic, I do want to get into your story and your travel adventures. But since we're on it, is there something that you wish most people knew about what it takes to create a film? You know, because right now you're talking about all these little, they're not little, the big aspects and people that it takes to get something together. Where I think to the majority of like the just general public, they would not know much about it.
Yeah, I think it's not even. It's hard for people in a sense. I would love to see studios working harder at showing breakdowns and what you actually see and different things like that. But then of course that's tied into the clients and what they do want to show or not. And like I heard a rumor, and I don't know if it's true, but for example, when I was working on the Revenant and Inaritu, I remember for a while he was. I don't think he even wanted to say the bear was CG. Like he just wanted to keep it. So it's that type of thing, right? It's the mystery, and I get it. That's cool, but I think it's just if studios start to show more breakdowns and understand how many people work on this, not just artists but production people and stuff. And I still find it really funny that you work on a heavy CG film or whatever, computer or animation, or especially like in the visual effects, and and I mean, don't get me wrong, they do a great job, I'm sure, for the actors, but the caterers get a credit above us, and it's weird little things. But again, that's union versus not union, because we're not, we're not unionized, which I'm fine with. But it's just one of those weird things that you put all this into it, and but at the same time, it's you just kind of do it, and I think it's just hopefully people are aware. And the best thing is always when a movie comes out and people think it's CG and it's all those different things, but there's so much in films that people don't realize that are there, that they'll never notice. Whether it's when a film was shot and there's a car chase and there's 4 cars on the street, but then it's populated with 100 cars. They just, all the cars look realistic and people just take it for it. So again, you've done your job. You're not. I don't want to pull you out. And no artist really wants to. But kind of
reveal the magic later on to.
Like it's
look
it's
how
just,
much has been done.
Yeah,
you don't even
exactly.
know. Yeah. And then I think, but what's worse, you're talking about credits. I think what's worse is when you don't even get credit. And I was reading on your website, you worked on Mad Max. Wait.
Oh yeah, well that was an interesting thing. That was kind of, that still to this day is one of the best experiences I had.
Really?
It was just one of those weird.
Fury Road, yeah.
That was one of those fluky things, right? Because when I started, I did in school I did zoology and didn't finish that, and
That's cool.
Then I jumped into a guinea pig and classic animation school and got kicked out of that. And then traveled for a bit.
Really? Wait. Why did you get kicked out? Let's take it slow. This is a big story.
No. I mean, I think it was probably a mutual kind of parting of the ways. But it was, years and years ago. I was, early 20s and just fully yourself and all that type of stuff. And I just wanted to do it. And I love to draw. I always was drawing and learn the principles. And still do every day. But I was. The school that won't be named, but the school that I was at, it was really their first year of trying it, and it was very much like them trying to get their feet. And at that time, late 90s, I think it was, what was it? When did I do that? I guess 96 or something like that. So everything was very Disney, right? Like it was Disney.
Yeah.
At that time, obviously the foundations and the principles are the same, so you learn those, and that's great. But then for myself, I was super blown away by, at that time, MTV Oddities came out with like Eon Flux and the Max, and then I, finally some of the Japanese animation was coming in, so you get to see these mature films like Akira and everything, and I was just like, that's more of me.
Yeah.
This is what I want to push. I want to learn these different things. And it's like, well, no, if you want to get a job, you need to learn how to draw your Disney princess. And I'm like, well, no.
Please no.
So then one thing led to another, and I just kind of flunked out. So anyways, that was done. I got on my motorbike and sold everything I owned and just went into the desert for about 6 months, reevaluated.
Into the desert, what do you do?
Oh, I got on a bike with a friend of mine, and we were going to try and create a book, and it didn't, again, early 20s, you think, you know.
Ambitious.
Yeah, I mean, Henry Rollins got it right when he always talks about quarter-century guys. Quarter-century guys, they know everything, blah, blah, blah. And then you turn 26 and you realize you know nothing. So, you know, it was one of those situations. And so I went with a friend of mine. We went into the desert. We got on our motorbikes, you know, riding off into the sunset, let the credits roll. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, shit, what am I going to do now? So we had enough money and we traveled, you know, all the way down through California and then all the way across to New Mexico and just kind of documented it and did these really cool things. And then I think it was at some point when I was in Death Valley that I realized I needed to come back, try and make amends. I still want to do my artwork, try and make amends with the school. Wrote them a letter. They never got back to me. And then I was in a comic shop and I overheard these guys talking about this studio called Mainframe. And I was like, oh, they're doing, you know, computer animation and the show Reboot and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, shit, that's cool. So, and I heard that they're looking for runners. And here it's called production assistants, but because it was English founders, runners is a gopher, like pretty much a production assistant. That, and they had this really cool thing going on that it was kind of like internships back before there was internships. So if you went and you worked for them as a runner, then you could work on the computers at night and you know, try and build up some sort of demo to move out of runnerhood.
To make art.
To make art and go be a modeler, which was what it was at that time. It was either like animator or a modeler, or, you know, that's kind of the modeler encompassed everything, right? Again, like I said,
texture,
it's like
everything.
everything, facial shapes, all that stuff. So I put in my application and didn't get it, but then I wrote them a really nice letter back, and then lo and behold, 6 months later they did call me up. So then I wound up, you know, taking it on and having that opportunity, which was, I mean, it opened the doors. It was fantastic. So then I did that for about a year, and then thank goodness, again, as you know, in your career, you meet a couple of really important people that really teach you a lot and take it on, and they really showed me kind of how to think in that world, because some people they learn a program like Photoshop or Maya or whatever it is, and they don't really understand it. They learn what they need to, so that when the software or the technology changes, then they're out of luck, right? So right from the get-go, I learned from these people. And I mean, this was back when it was Softimage and it was these old computers, and you know, the only painting software we had was GIMP, and it was just like, and then I befriended the art, and that was the good thing. Getting back finally to this Mad Max thing.
No, take your time. We got time. Yeah. This is really fascinating. Yeah, keep going.
But so the one good thing that I did love about being a runner too is if you have a good personality and you look at this and you, like, for me, I'm like, these people are doing what I want to do. So then, like, in the morning I would go to Starbucks and I would draw, and then at lunch I would draw, and then I would go after work when everybody left their computers, I'd be on the computer. But during this, you would meet these people that were very inspiring, but then you also befriended. So I met these art directors and stuff, and then one of the art directors was so nice, and he was just like, you know, here's Photoshop. He actually works in the city too. So Ken Henderson, awesome. He was one of the old art directors I knew back in the day.
Sweet.
But yeah, he was the same guy that taught me back in the day too. That was just like, you know, artists are almost like actors. You know, you learn your thing, and you might not get hired for certain things. You might get hired for other things. So don't worry about it. But he showed me Photoshop, and I was like, this thing's amazing. Like, what is this? Yeah. And of course, your first Photoshop stuff is absolutely deplorable. Oh my God.
Don't want to look back, but that's where we start. We have to start somewhere.
Yeah. But that spawned another thing through an old friend of mine, and she got me an opportunity to fly to New York to pitch to MTV for an idea I had. So it all kind of spawned this type of stuff. And then I became, after a year, I became a modeler. But during that time, I befriended their kind of head creative there, Brendan McCarthy. He's just this wild, traditional artist. He was one of the guys that created a lot of stuff for 2000 AD, the comic.
Wow.
He did stuff like one of his first gigs was he did the creature design for Enemy Mine back in the 80s. Like, just wild artist, man. He does some of it, like some of his comics were banned. Like, it's just like he's out there, and he never touches anything digitally, right? He does everything traditional, and he was the guy that taught me to use liquid paper pens to do your highlights when you're inking. So you use those, and like all the fun little tricks that these guys do. So, anyways, did the mainframe thing, did the modeling, all that, and then left. Went traveling with my now wife, but during that time we did Southeast Asia, went to Australia, and out of work. Out of money, should I say. Yeah. So found this kind of graphics job doing these like shitty graphics for these rugby league in Australia. There's a rugby league called the NRL. So
wait, before you keep going, sorry, I'll have to I feel like there's so much happening, and I really love this story. I'm glad you're saying it. Well, I think you gave me a little glimpse, so I'm glad I'm getting the full thing. But why did you end up leaving? Was it good when you were in Mainframe? What was your motivation?
No, it was good. I think I just needed a break.
Really?
I think it was, yeah. I think, again, we'll talk more about it, but the work-life balance is so key. And I think I was just ready to go. Like, it was about, back then, of course, you're younger, and, a year or two seems like a long time, which really it isn't. But, I think it was just time to go. I wanted to take a break. I'd worked on some fun stuff. And then my partner, now I was like, man, she wanted to go and I wanted to go, so I wanted to just explore.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that was the thing. Yeah, and I think that was the big thing. I always wanted to go to, at that time, Southeast Asia, and then that was right around 99, and there was all that stuff about Y2K, and I was like, oh shit, if this goes down, I want to be somewhere else, and it was just so naive, but. I was like, all right, let's go traveling. And then, we're in Indonesia and all those places, and Bali, and then we hit Australia after the Y2K never happened.
Very nice. When you went to Southeast Asia, did that change your kind of artistic sensibilities at all? Because for like if you living in North America, I'm assuming that's where you lived and born. Like going there, especially as an artist, did that?
Yeah, I think it does for sure. I mean. The places that really changed me, I think, sometimes too, when you actually have a chance to do more artwork. I mean, Europe did, like when I, went through Italy, but Australia, New Zealand really did too. Okay. Like I actually really liked being as far away as possible from North America, because as you do and wherever you grow up, you get very tunnel visioned, and you feel like you're always not as good as this other artist that you admire. And really, as you get older, like for me, I find it's not about that. Everybody has their thing, and but at that time, it's like, you're like, oh, fuck, like, I love Hellboy. I wish I could draw like Mignola, but I can't. And, you do all these things to try and find yourself.
Man, that's what I like about you. You got this perspective, and I think what you're saying is so important for people to hear. Because, like you said, it's so easy to get caught up in this. It becomes a little bit of a negative cycle, I guess, just being stuck in it and just gaining perspective. And it sounds like from the beginning, well, I guess before you got into the art industry, you had this, like you're a sponge, you had this desire to just keep absorbing information, because I think it wouldn't, for people who have learned 3D and got into the industry, it's a lot to learn, and the fact that you're just able to do it in the evenings at a company working, I'm sure,
Yeah, I mean, they gave me the opportunity. It was great too, right?
But you also had that work ethics
drive,
and desire.
Passion,
But where did that come from? Do you know?
I think just the love of it. Like, I've always loved film. Like, my parents, from a young age, I mean, I was the kid that my mom would bring home, like, computer paper, the old shitty computer paper. Yeah. And I remember, like, years ago, still drawing these little, like, when I was little, watching The Greatest American Hero and drawing these stickmen jump off cliffs and fly, and these weird kind of profile, pieces. And, I think it was that. And I think as and then as you get into kind of your 20s and stuff, and I think like with the whole mainframe thing and failing, I think people don't realize how important failing is. And I think for me, with the whole school thing, I think it was great because it made me go, I'll show you. Like there was still that part of me, like I'll show you. Yeah. I'm gonna do this, but then it was still for me. But I think it was there's that underlying je ne sais quoi, that just is just you. It's nice to actually have that push, right?
It can be a good drive as long as it's kind of a positive. Well, maybe a little negativity in there is good too. Just to kind of A little bit of spite just to show them. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, I interrupted you. So you came to Australia.
Oh,
graphic
yeah,
design.
yeah.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. So I was working on this shitty stuff, and my partner Janina, at the time, she is working at this little restaurant, and then out of the blue, I forget how I got in contact. I guess it was through email, because I mean back then everybody had a Hotmail, so I had a Hotmail account, and I was at an internet cafe, and then lo and behold, Brendan McCarthy, through a friend, I think Brendan McCarthy found out that I was there, and I was doing my surfing and stuff like that, or at that time trying to just get better at surfing, and make some money, and somehow he was just like, oh, hey, Raine, I know we have it's great to see you. How would you feel about, coming and working with George Miller on the new Mad Max film that we're working on? And I was like, yeah. Because the thing is, Brendan McCarthy actually brought this idea to George. Really? It was his idea.
Wow.
Yeah. But Brendan's stuff is way out there. Like, and how George was able to work with him and bring it more to a thing, and I'm glad that it took so long for Fury Road to get out, because if it was, like, there's no way they kept so much of what was done, even on the storyboard phase. I was so blown away. But I mean, again, I was an assistant storyboard artist, super fortunate. I was paid under the table. That's why I was uncredited, because it was kind of just a thing, right? And it was just, but it was amazing, as George Miller is a huge architect freak. It was right in the kind of red light district of King's Cross. It was just 5 of us. So it was Brendan McCarthy, this other amazing artist, Peter Pound, who was Alex Proyas's concept artist for years and years and years, Dark City, The Crow, all that stuff. And then Mark Sexton, who's amazing, amazing storyboard artist, did all storyboards for like the prequels for Star Wars when they're filming in Australia. Like, amazing, like, talented. And this is back in the day when you're doing storyboards on whiteboards, like electronic whiteboards. So what it would do is you do all your stuff in dry erase, and then the scan, it would print out this really crappy version, and then you would my role would be to do the in-betweens, and then like photocopy it, blow it up, render it, put it on the wall. But it was what George learned from Babe, and it's just what you do is you do as much as you can, and you put it all up, and you look at it, lay it out, and then you can see that the camera's flipping where it shouldn't. You can see in one shot their left hand's up, but then the next frame the right hand's up, and there's inconsistency. So it was a really good learning experience. So I did that for a couple of months, about 3 months, I think. And then it was really funny because, just how the world works. George was like, oh yeah, well, Raine, I heard you know computer graphics, and I'm like, oh yeah, I do. And he's like, well, I have all these computers downstairs from Babe, and they're useless, and soft-image. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, I have this idea for this penguin movie. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to do a penguin. What are you talking about? And so I wound up modeling out an emperor penguin for him, like back in 2000. And then, anyways, wound up leaving Australia. Did Toronto for 4 years, and then I was ready to leave Toronto. And then again, I followed my now wife there because she was doing her interior design. Amazing interior designer. But I was like, I'm done. We got to do that. And then there was this opportunity in Australia again. And then, so that's when I went back to Australia a second time, and it wound up being this penguin movie, Happy Feet, and that's what I wound up.
4 years later.
Yeah, and it was amazing. Like, again, George Miller, guy's incredible photographic memory. I saw him, and I was like, oh, George, I don't know if you remember. He's like, oh, Raine, it's so good to see you. You're working on this film, man. It's just like, it was, and he is one of the nicest people I've ever met.
But he was not the one who got you back on that job.
No, it was the studio, but he hired Animal Logic for this idea for with Warner Brothers.
I wanted to check, because it seems like you're making these friendships along the way that keep coming back. It's just these connections that were, like you said, they're kind of by chance sometimes, out of just the fact that you're saying, like, even in the beginning you overheard someone talk about Mainframe, and then you meet this guy while you're traveling. Like, what are the chances you would be in Australia? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I think that's.
Well, you just can't burn your bridges too, right? Like, that's such an important thing. Yeah. Even if people piss you off. Like, I know I piss a lot of people off, right?
Do you think you do?
I think I do. I wear my heart on my sleeve. So I think there's a lot of people that admire it or like it, and then there's other people that it pisses off. So I think, but you have to be decisive. There's nothing worse than, I think, being indecisive, especially now in this day and age where you're never gonna, and I try and tell this to certain artists when I have the opportunity, but it's hard because I don't want people to get their backs up, but you're never gonna make everybody happy, right? You're never gonna please everybody. So, you just gotta kind of stick to your thing, and then also really be aware, not hurt people's feelings or anything, but just still be very strong in your convictions, and also be able to back it up, man. Like if there's nothing worse than people that say, well, I don't like it. I'm like, well, why don't you like it? Oh, well, I don't know. I just don't like it.
Constructive criticism. Come on.
It's the same thing that I don't like when people say I like it, and then you ask them why they like it, and they don't know either. So even with my kids now, they're my tiny little art directors. I've got them working on like, if you like what I've done or don't like, can you tell me why? And helping them understand. I've done collaborative pieces with them, which is great. Awesome. It's super fun, and just getting them involved as much as possible, and helping them kind of see the bigger picture maybe a little bit, even just in the art world.
They're getting the pro training.
Yeah, critical thinking, right? It
is really frustrating when you have a client, like you were saying, and they can't explain to you why they like something. Like, how are you in this position where you have to judge this art, but you also don't know what if it makes it great or make it bad. Yeah, I'm sure you've
I was, man, to this, I mean, maybe I'll wait until I've just totally gone off on my own tangent, but I would still love, all of us have so many wonderful stories and very funny stories where you don't have to name names, but I would love to do a book of people's stories like with some of the stuff when, from different studios and people telling them, and we're just talking, and it's just funny. And
that would be such a good project.
Set, people, dealing with clients, people dealing with some of the funniest, like you said, trying to get stuff out of clients. And when you work in commercials, I find commercials are hilarious. The client comes in and some of the terms they say is great, but it's the same thing. Like I had an art director at Weta, and we're working on something on Tintin, and he said this line, and at that time I'm like, what are you talking about? But now, years later, I totally got it, where he said something. He's like, look, I don't want to see it, I want to feel it. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? But then now now
you get it.
I'm starting to get it. I'm like, oh, right, okay, I understand. So, there's different things. We had a creative director at another studio, and we started to call whatever he said certain terminologies, and we wanted to create a little book of just the things that he would go off on, which was great. But
I think that would be actually a great idea, just because if you interviewed a couple of people, probably too, man, you're gonna get more than one book. I think that would be a pretty good series.
There's some great stories out there,
and the amount of people that can relate to you too. It's the artist industry is huge, but
I think some of them, even versus like visual effects and animation, talking with like on-set crew, the on-set crew, the live, man, the stories they have when they're on set, I just in stitches sometimes with talking to some friends on the stuff they talk about and the things that happen, and you're like, wow, all right.
Petty people.
But just even with like main actors and their what they're having to deal with the actors and having to deal with their rock star status of celebrity, and it's so funny. It's fantastic.
I think what you said about being decisive, especially, it seems like the higher you go, like the more responsibility you have, the more people you work with, that's where being decisive is so important. Because I've experienced a little bit of like working with a team where I was helping direct, but man, at least personally, like I never want to be in a situation where I say something and then I like go back on it, because having been an artist, you realize like, man, the flip-flopping and you just don't want to do that.
I think unfortunately it's inevitable. You will.
Yeah.
You'll see it and you'll be like, but then like for myself, like I'll call it. I'll be like, oh dude, my bad. I was wrong. And then you do these terms, like anybody who's in the industry, there's these certain terms, as you know, that come on and they drive me nuts, but then you wind up saying them, like, why don't we split the difference?
Oh yeah, done a lot of that.
And all that type of stuff. And I love it when they're like, can I just have it 10% more like this? I'm like, how there's no make art button. I'll do my best. But
you're right. You're totally right. And I actually, now that I think of it, because in the end, it falls on you if it's bad. It's going to be you or who's at fault. And I think that's why you end up doing these things where like, okay, 10%, because you think, like, we're going to get it right. And it's tricky. I guess as long as your team trusts you, right? And that's probably the big thing, is just like establishing that relationship before you can, just ask for these changes that sometimes seem ridiculous but needed.
Yeah, I think it's just as long as you have your team's back and things like that. But I think it's good, as you're saying, if you're you have your convictions, but some of the VFX soups that I've worked with, just the best ones are open. Like they're open.
Mm-hmm.
If you hit what they want, but then you suggest other things and you speak up. Depending, and then again, it's like everybody's different, so it depends on who you're talking to. Like you have to read that situation. But yeah, if you're willing to kind of speak up and plus it, they're super open, and then you just go from there, and it's yeah, it's really good. I mean, there's good and bad to it. But
I think that's why it's all about how you build up your team. If you've got a team of like amazing artists, you kind of just want to let them be the best selves.
Yeah,
right?
if you get that, but again, a lot of the time you're not given that.
Yeah.
And it really is about, especially when you work on a team. I think it's so important to give that artist ownership.
Mm-hmm.
As much as they can, and I get that a lot of times the production doesn't quite get it, or if they don't hit it and they get frustrated, but really it falls on the lead or the supervisor to really try and do what they can to shelter them, but also spend more time with them and mentor them and plus them and try and help them see, because every artist has a different way of working, but there's certain things that we have to adhere to based on the consistency of what we're trying to achieve.
Oh yeah.
So that's always an issue too. It can be quite difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's the thing too, where like the younger kids that are coming up, right? The younger artists. For me, it's like take your time and really kind of enjoy it as much as possible. Like when I started off, you weren't a senior until you were 10 years in the industry, and now like there's artists that I know and they get pissed off when they're not a senior after a year, and it's just like, well, you're not like. You're a good artist. A good artist doesn't mean that you're a senior. A good artist doesn't mean that you're a lead. Sometimes the best artists make the worst leaders, right? Like for myself, it's taken a long time, and I'm not the best artist. There are so many better artists than me out there, and there's so many better artists than me on my team. But I think where they don't realize is the different things that certain supervisors and leads have to do that is behind the curtains, that so they don't see it and they don't have to deal with it. And again, as you start to go through, you're not going to be able, unfortunately, do as much artwork. So hopefully I'm just fortunate if I get to do one. Sometimes it works out, like certain movies I work on, because I'm the first on. Yeah, it's wicked. I get to do one of the hero characters or creatures or hard surface assets or whatever it is. But then the production has to understand that that's going to be a slow burn, right? So if they want it tomorrow, it's not going to happen. So I need to give it to another artist because I'm in meetings, I'm in doing all these things. So those artists need to understand that, yeah, that's great. You want to be a lead. That means your team comes first, not you. And that's where they need to start understanding those things.
When did you realize you wanted that change to go from artist to supervisor? I mean, you're still an artist, but like you said, now you have all these responsibilities, whether you're dealing with clients, directors, and shielding your team from it. And
I mean, I don't know. I think it just kind of happened organically. Like as we were talking about earlier offline, is like right now I'm super happy because I'm actually on a show and I'm not the supervisor, and the supervisor's on it. It's awesome guy, and I'm so happy to just be doing art on a character, on a creature, and
awesome.
It's super fun. Like it's amazing how much you can get done in a day
when you don't do anything.
Just there working on it. It's pretty fun. So that's nice because I like, for me, like when I left ILM and then went and worked with you at your studio at Atomic, I was burnt out. Like I had taken on so much because the way that ILM had grown, and there were so few of us to start. Like when I first went to ILM, I was the only texture artist there. It was an experiment, right? So ILM, when they started, they were a pod where they were seeing if it was going to work. So there was no front end asset work, right? And then Warcraft happened, and so pretty much Pixar Canada had folded. I jumped on to DD to be the 6-string quarterback CG supervisor because couldn't find anybody else, digital domain. So, but that was a great experience too. Like I learned a lot actually just being there. And again, having amazing people back you. I mean, you're only as good as your team and then the people that support you. And luckily I had a couple of people in my corner that helped me out a lot. And then left that, but I was done. Like I realized I took that opportunity. I realized CG supervising is not for me.
Really?
Yeah.
It was too much. It was too big of an umbrella.
It was, I don't know. For me, I mean, every CG supervisor role each studio is different, right? So like
Yeah, that's
ILM,
true.
it's very technical. I think Image Engine, from what I've been told, is quite technical, which is great and it's good. But the one Digital Domain, there was so much going on at the time that I was coming on. I just felt like I wasn't even being that technical. I was just putting out a lot of fires, and it wasn't really my thing. But it did teach me a lot about communication. So that's what really taught me how to make sure I'm communicating with production, I'm communicating with everybody. And then after that, I was just like, I heard about this opportunity at ILM, and I was like, oh man, it's ILM, and they might do this. I'm happy just going and again going back to being an artist, and talking about that work-life balance. I think work-life balance, but also just art balance, like taking a break, still doing art, but just removing some of that pressure and just going back
of people management and everything else and
and just I always like being tested in the sense that every time I jump on a film, every time I do an asset, I think for that split second, I think, man, maybe this is it. This is the time
this is the life.
This and this
oh,
is
really?
this is the time they're gonna figure me out. I'm a hack.
That.
I'm not gonna be able to pull this off. This is the one time. This is it. But then you move through it and all that stuff.
I thought you were gonna say this is a life. You're just making art. That's what I wanted to ask you. Is that do you like the idea of being able to every project jump back and forth from being the supervisor to just being an artist? Would you prefer that balance? Because you're an artist. That's how you started. You're an artist at heart. And then, like you said, once you get up higher, then you just end up making less things, and you get different rewards through what you do, and you take care of people. And I think that definitely feels really good when you got a team and it's strong, and you're just all you do is just support this group of people and make amazing stuff. But do you like, similar to what you're doing now, jumping back and forth? Yeah,
I do actually, and I mean that's the other thing why I think I enjoy ILM so much as a studio is because, again, the CG Supervisor thing. I wasn't doing any art,
Wow.
And now the one thing with ILM is I guess for lack of a better term, we call them discipline soups. So every discipline has their supervisors, and there's multiple ones and things like that based on the show. But at least at ILM, I get to supervise and get to do some sort of artwork.
Yeah.
Again, it's not as much, but I still get to do some sort of quality. And then you also, at the end of the show, you're the guy doing a lot of the cleanup, the grunt work that
when everyone else leaves.
And it gets to it too. Like it's art, it's work I don't even want to give to another artist, right? It's not fair to them. I've done a lot of it. I mean, the running joke also for all of us too is that when you've been in the industry long enough, everybody's worked on pipes, everybody's worked on some sort of concrete tarmac, somebody's worked a box, like it's just these quintessential it's
they'd have to be remade every time for every show. Every time you do a show, gotta make a spoon.
Well, that's it. Like this, hopefully we're just getting to the point that we can reuse that and just change it enough. But then of course it gets into legalities, which is always a fun thing too. But yeah, no, as far as the art, I think, and again, I think this goes back to even when we hire people, when we're looking for people, I always like seeing people that do stuff outside of work. They do some sort of extracurricular activities. They get outside. They enjoy film, but they also do some sort of other artwork. Like, because I think if you really, like for me, maybe it's just me and the way that I need to live, but art is a 24-hour thing. It doesn't end at 6 o'clock. It doesn't end. Like I'm always thinking about ideas. I'm always doing art. And then maybe it's because music is so important to me that I always get so much inspiration from the music, and I usually always have something in my ears with the music, and it always inspires me that way. But again, there's times you need to take a break. Like this summer, I totally took a back seat and did a little bit of artwork. I mean, I was doing the job, but my own personal artwork, just to make sure that I'm spending time with the kids. I took some more time off, just to enjoy, like
living.
I mean, it's going back to that thing of keeping up with the Joneses, right? You always feel like you're keeping up with the Joneses sometimes. And I think, again, when you're talking earlier about pros and cons, like social media is great and Instagram's great, but I think everybody just needs to realize what it is, because I finally got on Instagram, a year and a bit ago, and it's great. You see all these amazing artists, but then you just start to get panicked because it's too much.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not doing enough. I see like, James Jean doing this, and I see this artist doing that. I see, some of the amazing artwork you're doing. I'm like,
Thanks.
what's wrong with me? Am I not? But then that's the thing is you
dude,
just,
that's so crazy.
but that's the thing is you need to, everybody, even artists that are starting out, you need to take a step back, right? You need to just chill a bit, man.
But also one thing I forget about what you're saying now is that, a lot of artists who are either freelancing or working for themselves and they're able to post their everyday stuff. What I think about, imagine if you could actually share the work you do every day at your job. I mean, your page would look like everyone else's page because you're doing like 8, 10, 12 hours of work every day of, sure, you're supervising, but you're still creating so much assets, art. I mean, and that's one that, I don't know about you, but that's one thing I typically forget when I see an artist who's able to work on fine art full time when they're able to post it. Like, it feels like a lot, and then you realize, oh, I'm spending that same amount of time. I'm still doing a lot of work. I just can't show it. So it feels like you're not on the same page, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point because now that you've said that, I think that is the hardest thing being in this industry. Whether you're in animation, a show that you worked on a show for a year, it doesn't get picked up, you can't show it. Visual effects, everything. Like, I think that's the hardest thing. Like, you see something that I worked on or other artists worked on, you see the end result. You didn't see the 2 months it took for me to get there, right?
And so many cool stages. That's the thing. Like, it goes through so many.
I would love to show that.
Exactly.
I wish I could, but it's just client and legalities, and they don't want you to show you a turnaround because they only want to show you the best of the best, and they don't want to show you, like, I love the process. I remember growing up and loving Warner Brothers, and then seeing, when I was little, seeing the actual pencil sketches of Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny and everything, and loving them more than the final product.
For sure. Oh yeah,
the
line
emotion,
is alive.
The emotion, and I mean, there was a years ago I was having an idea, if I somehow could swindle it, is just do an artist series called Forbidden Landscapes, and what it is it's so funny that you work on these. So when I'm texture painting, try not to get too technical, but in a sense what happens is you take that model and you have to unfold it, and then you're painting on a square map over many different square maps to give the look of the character. But there was times that you'd zoom in so much into these textures and it looked like a landscape. And I would love to just do a series of
really
that stuff.
Abstract shapes, right?
Crazy, like the craziest stuff. And then you zoom out and it's an unfolded face and it looks really weird. But if you zoom in, because we're dealing with pixel resolutions that are incredible, like you're dealing with 4K, 8K. I mean, there's, on Valerian with the software packages now, when I had to work on this hero shot, and the ship was so big, and I had to work on this one area, and I had to work at 32K because I had to work on this one area, and I mean 32,000 pixels.
That's insane. And nobody ever sees it because then you got lighting and motion blur and camera shake.
Oh man, it looks great. And then, but that's the funniest thing is, I mean, you can't take it too personally either, because you're like, oh, I just did. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. Okay. 2 seconds and it's gone.
Man, and I wonder if that stuff can be optimized. I often wonder where the amount of hours that go into so much work where it's not seen. And I think it's great to keep the quality up. I think it's great, and I think it's what you're talking about feeling, not seeing. That's I think that's a huge part of it. But I wonder if live action films can be planned out similar to 2D or 3D, where your assets are there and they're not really wasted because where things are getting.
I think they are, and they can be, but the problem is now with the CG world is they can, I mean, there's that terminology again, another swear, but they pixel fuck stuff, right? They go to the nth degree because they can, instead of the old days where you're like, you have two takes, or it's animatronics, or it's different things like that. And I think hopefully at some point we'll come to some sort of middle ground, like, it gets so ridiculous, and nobody cares at the end of the day, really. Like, yeah, okay, great, it looks great, but the average person isn't gonna. It looks good. You got to let it go, and I think that's the problem. No, it doesn't, and it's so much money is wasted, really. Like it really does come. So much of it now comes down to the 5%. So the 5% is the people that this person says it should look like this person says it should look like that, but it really is 5%. And it doesn't look it doesn't look any better. It just looks different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like why are we doing this? You know, but again, when you get into these high profile films, you have so many people that want to have their say and claim ownership that I suggested that, and it's just like, you know, so you always have to battle through that stuff. And I think that's again going back to the best thing about if you have a life outside of this, if you have your own artwork, you know, if you have a few friends that, you know, you can chat with about it and just get it out, because you know, things like that. It's super important. Mm-hmm. You know, it's super important.
Would you recommend people to get into this industry? Or what would you say? maybe if you do recommend, what would you kind of as a caveat?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah.
But I'm always constantly thinking about the end game. Like I'm constantly thinking about. It's a really hard thing too, because like for myself, I love doing my own artwork. So I'm always in juxtapose of I'm doing this work that I enjoy, but then I always feel like when I get home and the kids go to bed or whatever, and you know, I just want to chill out with my wife and watch a movie. I feel like there's still that nagging pressure that I need to be creating. I need to be creating my own stuff. I need to be getting my own stuff out there. So that's always such a battle. I do recommend it. I mean, games, film, animation. It's all so interesting. I feel so fortunate for how it unfolded for me. I honestly don't know how kids do it today. I mean, there's certain things that are far easier. Like I can't believe that you can edit something and have your demo or have something you've done within so fast. Where when I was trying to get jobs in the day, these really crappy VHS copies that I had to put in FedEx, and you mailed it out, and you spent hundreds of dollars trying to get a job, and nothing would come back, and 4 weeks later you get this crappy letter by some company you didn't even care about, but you just needed a job, and you know, so that there's that. But yeah, it's a really hard. I think I would recommend it if they understand that it's a life decision. Like this isn't like I'm gonna jump in it and see how I'm gonna dabble, like just stick my toe in the water, and I kind of like art. I kind of like this, but you know, art's fun. You know, it like we all say, it's 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration, right? Yeah. Like it is a lot of work. I think that's what people, you know, that don't do it or thinking of getting into it. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work with dealing with other people and working with teams and understanding how to have your soft skills and your critical thinking. But if you're passionate and you love art and you like you know, you want to give it a go, I think I mean, like I would do it again. It's just it's crazy, but you can't. I think the thing with, again, going back to like a lot of the younger artists, they're always just trying to get there so fast. Right? They're trying to climb that mountain, but they don't know how to get up the mountain. But they know they got to get there, but they don't know how. And I'm like, well, again, like we always said, enjoy the journey. Like, it's fine being an artist. Like, I love just being an artist and just doing work, and don't feel obligated that the only way you're going to be quote unquote successful is that you're a lead or a supervisor or a director or a VFX soup. You know, find what your passion is and love it. There's certain people, and I think that's where it falls on the studio too, to also, you know, have the courage to just be like, you know what, you're an amazing artist. We don't want you to leave. There. We're investing in you. Just stay here, you know, and work on that. And I think it's also, right now in Vancouver, especially, it's an artist market. So you have that ability to grow. But I mean, this industry is so volatile that we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years from now, right? So,
but the thing about you're saying, like, do you need to grow? And you're right. I read this book, Radical Condor, and it's just about how to work with teams and how to kind of create really trusting relationship with a company where when you can give critical feedback, people will take it well because they know they care about your process. But one recommendation in the book was for company people who run the company was, you know, realizing who are your rock stars, people that are just good at that skill and who need to stay at that skill because they're not going to be good leaders, but they're just the best. And then how to, like you're saying, reward that, because it doesn't feel like it exists. You get more money if you become soup, whatever you hire. But for people who are amazing at their skill, you want to keep them, so you want them to teach other people. There's not a lot of reward. Maybe it's I hope it's changing, but there's not a lot of reward where, you know, they should be hopefully paid more and given more credit because of the kind of work they're doing, without having to get into the supervisor or, you know, like lead position to feel like, I don't know, they're validated or something.
Exactly.
Because like it's like you said, not everyone can lead, not everyone can. It's a skill that you can learn, but I think some of it has to be natural in your personality.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm still learning every day, like learning how to do it, and I still question all the time. I'm like, is this, should I be doing this? But I agree, and as long as those rock star artists aren't assholes, like I just, you know,
that's big. That's big.
Like you still have to work with the team. You still have to be, you know, still be good. If not, then man, go do your artwork somewhere else, man. That's totally cool. That's great. It's the same thing as, like, you know, we're chatting again offline about constructive criticism. Like so many artists, like they get their backup, but you know what? Pixar came out with this good term when I was working with them, that we're just trying to plus stuff, right? We're just trying to make it the best it can be. We're not saying that you can't do what you're doing. We're just trying to make it better across the board, and it's going to make you better. And as soon as you get your backup, and especially in production art, it's not yours. Like that's the thing that some of these artists, if you want it to be yours, then you go do your personal artwork and not listen to people, because I have friends that do paint overs on my work and it makes my work better and I'm happy for it. Especially one good friend, Brandon Reipken, shout out to that guy, amazing concept artist. But that's what I find is that when you get into a leadership and supervisor role and you try and give feedback, some people are really great at it, some people aren't, but you have to be able to receive it and also understand it. And sometimes what people don't realize is when you give critical feedback that is making your work better, or it's again, it could be just different. And you know, you as an artist, but you're a production artist, you're still paid to do this. If you still fundamentally believe that your piece, your choices are better, that's fine. But
it's not yours.
Yeah, it's not yours. Sorry. I'm asking you to do this. Yeah. If you want to do what's asked, or and again, we run into this a lot. It's not even me. It's like what the higher up, the visual effects supervisor, the client wants. You need to deliver that. If you have another version, show that other version. And if you think that's better, that's cool. But at the end of the day, you're getting paid to do this.
There's still a chain of command, and there's people putting money into it. Yeah.
And you still have the freedom to be an artist. You're still creating. You're still putting your spin on it. You're still doing all these things. It was like a long time ago. I worked with, you know, a great animator, and back in Toronto, we're working on a television series, and he was saying that animators would get all hoity-toity because he's telling them how, like, okay, the character needs to go in through this door and out through this door, and at some point he needs to sit in this chair, and they're like, well, how dare him say, like, I should be able to do it. He's like, look, I didn't say how he should enter the door. I didn't say how he should get to the chair. I didn't say how he should leave. But these are the key things that needs to happen in this shot. And it's just that kind of change, helping them change their perception, right? Like getting out of that kind of idea.
I think as long as you embrace this idea that you're talking about of, you know, this is not for you, it's for someone else, I think you're going to be so much happier at work. You're going to be so much happier. And then this goes back to your point about finding people who do personal work. Because, I think once you realize that what you make at work is, you know, it's not going to be for yourself, I think to satisfy your inner artist, you kind of have to do something at home. I think you have kind of to have ownership of and to make those decisions, so that when you do go back to work, that itch, and that's what you're talking about, like it's there. You don't want to kind of take that out at work, or maybe you can if you're lucky and the projects allow you to do that. I think it happens. It's great, but just that that's one thing I found valuable to myself, and it's an advice I give, is for people like to do their own thing, because often you're just going to be disappointed if you expect it from work. It'll happen, but often it may not, just because, like you said, there's a chain of command, and sometimes you'll do decisions you may not even agree with, because, you know, the top of the top said, here's what we do. And then
it's weird too. It's almost like sometimes, like when I read books, I read two books at the same time, and one is usually a nonfiction, and one is like a fiction. So if I read some sort of crazy sci-fi fantasy thing or something, I like kind of grounding it with having every so often like the Bowie biography or something like that, like something that's going to ground me and help me grow that way. It's the same thing that I find weird. Like if I'm working on a very realistic show, most of the art I tend to do on my own is more stylized and more comical. And then when I go back, say, to animation, I'm working on more stylized stuff. I tend to do, I wouldn't say my stuff is never fully realistic, but it's more mature.
Yeah, you want variety, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I like it. And again, this is the other problem that I find with certain artists is they get into that social media loop where everything they do is the same.
Yeah.
Because they get so much, and maybe that's their thing. But I can't work like that. I like doing multiple different things, and maybe that means I have no sense of myself when I draw. But I like doing different things. And again, going back to the traditional, if you like doing creatures or you like doing humans, but you're bad at hands, don't cheat. Don't hide the hands. Don't just work on that stuff. Work on being better. Work on what. If you like it, then that's great. If you don't like it, then But
you just mentioned that sense of self. That's kind of a funny thing to say because some of the artists I even spoke to here, and this idea of wanting to pursue multiple things because, well, not only you're drawn to it, each look you pursue adds to yourself, but just picking one, I don't know about yourself, but it's not that I'm hesitant. It's just I think you can be maybe multi-layered. I don't know. What are your thoughts on, like you said, what are your thoughts on not just doing one thing? Personally, do you think because you said you don't have a sense of self, do you think you do, or is that a joke, kind of an off comment?
Yeah, it's kind of an off comment. I mean, I do, but I think it's sometimes you get, as you know, with the artwork we all do is just I feel for the longest time I never complete anything, and then it's never fully done, or I guess in the sense of self where I'll do a piece, but then if I look at my last 5 pieces, they're not really a series. Like I couldn't show them as an art series because they're all all over the place. But I think as long as you're able to see, say for yourself with your artwork, if I look at your murals and then I look at, say, your watercolors, they're different, but I know it's you. And I think sometimes I still always question, is this me? Am I trying? Because we're only, the thing is, I think what artists need to do, another friend of mine said a really good quote a long time ago, and I don't think she realized how brilliant it was because I always hold on to it. But an artist is defined by the science of their times. And I think that is such a key thing, right? Because, Michelangelo and Da Vinci, they got to dissect cadavers. They got to do all these different things. We don't, but we have Photoshop and we have digital and we still have traditional and we're all this. And the other thing for me is it's all been done before. It has. And I think the only thing that makes it different is the combination in which you put it into play that makes it unique. So our styles are based on a culmination of, I love Michelangelo. His elongation and giganticism is amazing. I love Frank Miller. I like Magnola. I love Norman Rockwell. And as an artist, you start to adhere to certain styles that you love, James Jean, all this stuff. I'm like, holy shit, this stuff's amazing. And then also for me, I was a skateboarder for many, many years. I still skate, sort of. But I grew up with, Pal Peralta and all these amazing skate designs. So I fell in love with that type of graphic and T-shirts and things. So I'm always feeling like I'm torn a bit. Some of the stuff I design with T-shirts in mind. Some of the things I design as a thinking of it being a mural print. Other things, I design, whatever. And I mean, there's things that I should be doing that would make me a better artist, and it would probably make my wife a lot happier if I did a couple of pieces that I feel like we could put on the walls that were a little bit nicer. But
that's, in the end, though, I think what you said is that you should do that if you need to. Because on the other hand, doing all those various things seems to satisfy the artist in you. And I guess because what you're saying is I relate to that very much, because I do try to do all these different things, and the question of am I a cohesive artist? Am I representing the right? But then the more you think about it, then in the end it comes to, but do I need to? Do I care? And then I think and that's why the more of these conversations I'm having with artists, that's why the more I come down to a conclusion that it only matters when it hits money. When you have to make a living, or if you want to make a living with whatever that is you're doing, that's where those questions matter. Up to that point, do whatever you want, man. It's just have a good time in this life that you get, and make cool stuff.
I think that's who are you doing this for? And I think like it's the money. Like if I want to be an artist, I mean, I've kind of scratched that niche because I've been fortunate enough to be in the industry making enough salary to support and still do my other art.
Exactly.
But I mean, I would still love to have time to just take 3 months off a year. And I mean, the ultimate goal for me would be the 3-6-3, man, where you just 3 months of the year you're working on your own stuff, 6 months of the year you're working with a team or somebody else, and 3 months of the year you're traveling.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that would be the end all be all for me. But
Just gonna go surf.
who knows? Yeah, I mean, any day. I mean, surf. I mean, that changed my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the other thing too, is I don't think enough artists do enough physical.
Oh my
I
God.
mean, if I would just be so insane if I didn't do some sort of physicality, like whatever that is, like hiking, snowboarding, rock climbing, it brings you back to a sense of self and a clarity that nothing else can give you, right? Like I mean, I see artists that don't do enough physical and they're an amazing artists, but I can see the wheels spinning in their heads and self-doubt and all these different things, instead of if you just pulled outside of yourself a bit, and looked at a sunset and realized that nothing is better than that. You will never create anything better than nature. As soon as you realize you'll never create anything better than nature, you're okay.
It's good to be humbled, basically.
Yeah.
And also, but I think when you're talking about looking for, earlier you were saying, I like these cycles. You're talking about hiring people who are looking for artists who do other things outside of work.
Yeah.
And because they're kind of better people to hang out with.
They are. I find their
At a
personalities
certain
are
point,
totally
you get
different.
tired of just talking about drawing this thing or this person. Like sometimes you just want to talk about, I don't know, like how cool trees are in this mountain you hiked up. Like he hears a photo of this beach here. I don't know. Like because you realize life is a lot more about it. And you were talking about these younger artists who are trying to get to this thing they want to do, and sometimes maybe. This is what I wanted to ask you, but sometimes we focus too much on just trying to copy and be someone to get into the industry, but bypassing this process you're talking about of maybe discovery. And actually, I have this question written down about how well, especially now, you end up working with so many artists, you end up mentoring a lot of artists. And do you notice a consistent thing that they're missing?
I mean, it depends on the artist. No, I mean, the artists that I've been working with lately that we've hired, I think for the most part, I'd say 90%, they're at a level that they're very talented, and I think they get it. They might need a little coaching here and there based on the style or what they should be looking for. But I think, I think, and again, personality goes so far. It's finally, like, I was super happy that ILM finally, we started hiring some junior artists, and we have a couple of junior artists. And they're killing it. Like they're
eager,
just
hungry.
Oh, but they're good, and they're friendly and they're fun. And again, it's like I'd far rather have a gung ho junior that has a skill set than a bitter senior, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just I don't. At my age now, I don't need that stuff. So it's, it's I don't know if it's lacking. I mean, we get stuff that is lacking, and then we give critique on it. But again, it depends on the industry. Like, I mean, and it also depends on the studio. So ILM is a certain level.
You guys get some really, really good artists. So.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy. And then you also have San Francisco that have these incredible artists down there that I learned from that just to blow me away. Like, to work under, Jean Bolt, who, I mean, started in the model shop, right? She was the one that created the dragon for Dragonheart, and it's just like Steve Walton, who's amazing, and he painted Davy Jones, like, on Pirates. So it's just like, how can you not be humbled by it? You meet other guys that are working, and their first gig was Ghostbusters doing the animatronics, and you're like, oh, okay.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's just crazy. But with the young artists, I think it's just I think if you have the passion and the personality, personality goes so far, man. It's so important. You can have the skills, but if you're a jerk, like, it's just, you're going to have a really, really hard time. But again, it's difficult. Like, I was in games for about 3 years, and that was a very interesting journey into itself. But I met some lifelong friends. Like, that was some of the best camaraderie I've had yet. I mean, that it was, at the end, it wasn't for me, and I had to get out, and I went back to film. But it was amazing. It was a really great experience, and the personalities were really good. And I mean, we knew what we were at too. That studio was we were shooting for a AAA. We were more a AA, but we all kind of knew it. But we were having fun, and we're trying to do the best within what we had.
Well, those are the Crash games, or what
yeah, the Crash games. Cool. Yeah, and then
you did everything.
I worked on the prototype.
You just worked on everything. Yeah.
It was fun. I mean, that was a blast, man. It was such a small team. I mean, I loved it. It was great. Like, at the end of the day, too, it's. I mean, we chatted about this at work too. It's like why sometimes it's so funny that your most fun projects do the worst.
Yeah.
Like and again, maybe I'm fortunate enough again that work in the industry and we can have some of these failures at other people's expenses, so that I don't have to go bankrupt.
Yep.
But yeah,
I hear this from artists, even like on a singular scale, where their favorite work gets the least likes or response online, where the things they thought they didn't care about doesn't, or something that's more.
Yeah, it's weird how that works.
And I think it's because you're catering to the majority, so you have to realize the kind of the maybe. I don't want to use it, but it's like the simplicity of people. You know what I mean? I think in general, once again, going back to the majority of people, and I think it's why kind of mediocre movies do really well, way better than not so. Like, for example, the latest Blade Runner probably didn't do as well as some like, well, I don't know, like those Baywatch movies. I don't know. Like,
I agree.
But most likely, maybe they didn't. And that's unfortunate because one is just a beautiful piece of art, and from music to. And that's kind of how it goes, I guess. And I think I often wonder about how can you be at peace? And like, you have to understand that when you're making work that you care about deeply, I think you kind of have to set off from a point where if you do care about response, you have to accept that you'll not get much.
Yeah, it still guts you. I mean, that's the thing, is it still guts you.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like we're saying, like Valerian, that was some of the most fun I had. We had a big team. We got to do some cool stuff. I mean, Weta was doing crazy stuff on their end, and again, the story didn't come together, and the acting wasn't great, and it didn't do that well, and it still guts you at the end of the day. Like, you're just like, I like what I did,
dude. But especially for you, when you spend like years on a project, that's a crazy thing, right?
Oh, it can be. I mean, certain projects can definitely take a long time, but it also, it's just crazy too when certain studios have a lot of money, and like when we worked on the Pixar shorts and we thought they were done, and then it gets changed because they have no timeline, so it's just you're just like, and then another short, again, we're talking about too, like another short, it was beautiful, like it was so good, and it was, I think, something like 95% done, and it got cut and it'll never see the light of day. And you're just like, damn,
you have to stress this is this is like the hard aches of the industry. I think that's probably why you're hesitating to let people know to get into this, because you're gonna get hurt.
You will. And I think that's the thing too. I mean, like, working on the first Apes, got to you get to work on all this cool stuff, and then all of a sudden one of the characters I work on gets cut, and you have like 3 shots, and you're like,
you never get to show it.
You can't. You can't, right? Like you want to. I mean, I'm sure you could privately and not get legalities against you.
This is why the Instagram game is not fair.
I think that's it. Because going back to what you're talking about with breakdowns, I think it would be so healthy for the industry. I think it would also. Publicity. I think it would even help the films. It would help the studios. It would help everything. If we were able to allow to show the process, like some of the process is it's crazy. But going back to what you said, like again, a friend of mine coined that kind of denominator thing is gray milk. It's just best intentions, but it all just kind of becomes gray milk, man. And I always say that sometimes I get you go through your ups and downs, but half-baked dreams, man. Like, you work on these shows, and I think that's another hard thing as artists is like, and you can see the backlash with the Star Wars movies, and that's a whole other discussion, but in your head, you think you can do better. You think you're putting all this time and effort into it, and then you see the end result, and it's just lacking. But I'm such a stickler for story. I think story is queen or king.
Yeah, something like that. Queen is good too.
Yeah, it's so important, right? Like, it's just it's incredible.
It's like no matter how good the art is, the story will ruin it.
And the craziest thing is I look at my favorite films of all time, and they're, a lot of them probably don't even have CG in them.
Yeah.
And the others are hard to distinguish if there's even CG in them, you know? And if it is, it's there to enhance. It should be there to enhance the story, and I think that's the problem too now because of the
these
money.
Days a lot, right? Yeah.
So again, like with Revenant, I think that film was too long, but that's another story. And it was quite different from the book, but that's fine. But I think that was the thing. Every once in a while, it's nice to be part of a project that you worked on something that's visual effects, and it's not it's just helping the story. It's not the center.
Transformers.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's not. That isn't the key to it.
You know how a lot of people these days complain about how a lot of things are not original, and I think maybe CG is a kind of a symptom where a movie gets publicity and is sold by how impressive it looks, and people kind of it's almost like a really nice comic book cover, and then you read the comic book, you're like, this sucked. Like, you get fooled, totally. And I think that's what it's almost like. It's probably actually I realize that it's not a bad analogy where like you realize CG. Like good trailers draw you in because Godzilla looks amazing.
But that's marketing, man. And I mean, you ever want to just listen to Bill Hicks from years ago? Bill Hicks, knows what he knew what he was talking about, because that's the problem, right? Like, and I think that's the thing. But I mean, every once in a while I go back and I watch old trailers of my favorite films from like the 60s and 70s and 80s, and oh man, they're awful. Yeah,
they're terrible trailers. My God. I remember watching what was it? It was like. Maybe like watching the old Planet of the Apes trailer, just terrible.
Even like, I mean, I was looking.
We got it good.
Yeah, I mean, I was even looking at like John Carpenter's The Thing is like one of my favorite films of all time, and that trailer is awful.
Which one was it, sir?
John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
82. Yeah. But it's great. But then Mad Max 2 or The Road Warrior changed my life, right? Yeah. So that's why having that little bit of an opportunity with George. But that was the craziest thing too, like going back to Australia, is watching Australia's called Mad Max 2, but here's The Road Warrior. Watching The Road Warrior with George and him telling me things is just crazy, like not realizing that there was no real score in it, and the score was the engines, and he did the sound of the engines to stimulate you for tension and all that stuff. It wasn't so all these really interesting things, right? But I mean, going back to the film thing, it's just funny because, like, I mean, my favorite films of last year was 3 Billboards and Dunkirk, and it was amazing. But that was really, I mean, 3 Billboards was incredible.
Haven't seen that one.
Oh, the writing's so good.
Yeah,
That's
why it's the writing, man.
Yeah,
it's the story is what you care about. Everything else is icing on the cake.
And Dunkirk, the tension. But again, Dunkirk is like. Almost like Baraka for me. Baraka is, I think, probably my favorite film of all time. But like Dunkirk, it would only be half the movie if Hans Zimmer didn't do that score, right?
Like, oh my God!
It was,
it was huge, but I like that the cinematography, the really long, drawn out shots. I mean, it's almost as if they knew that Hans Zimmer is going to be there at the end. They're like, let's do this 1 minute shot because he's going to do magic with it, and the tension and the drone,
Well, it's great, too, because, I mean, I went with my dad, and my dad's a big World War II buff, and he was an aviation photographer for years and stuff. So even just talking to him and seeing if they got it right. And they did.
Wow.
He was even telling me stuff that I was like, oh, no way. And he's like, that's why the Spitfire could do that, because it was so light based on this, and it could glide that long. And you're like, oh, okay. It's like, but it's like, again, it goes back to that kind of, still in art, learning the principles, learning the process, and then being able to bend the spoon if you need to, right? Like you still need to have that foundation, even like I was saying at the beginning of the conversation, with materials and learning how things react to light and why they react to light. And I think that's where slowly, if we all have time, the crossover as it gets into CG from design and art, that, if they have more time to be able to design for CG, because they still have to you still have to impress clients, but then to have that ability to, build out from that, and I think, but it depends on the project too. Like with Valerian, it was really great because Ben Moreau, who did a crazy amount of artwork for Valerian,
he's a beast.
Yeah,
oh my God,
amazing stuff. Yeah. But the thing is to be able to then take his artwork and make it my own, and Luke and Philippe, the VFX soup at ILM, was totally open to it, and we were just trying to push it, and it had all the kind of the ideas there that I knew that was going to be leather, and I knew that was a type of metal, and it wasn't really distinguishable. But it gave me enough to build from. That's so important, and it drives me nuts when sometimes you get design, and yes, it's lit well, but there's no material difference between the skin looks like the cloth, which I'm like, well, that's great, and I can make it my own, but don't come back and get angry at me when I make it my own because you didn't give me enough information.
This is why art has got to study from life. But I think that's why there's also a huge difference between the production design to an illustration. Like you got to know what you're doing and where you're at and know where this is going to go. And I'm to be honest, I'm only maybe last year or two understanding that better.
Yeah.
Because I was definitely naive, and I'm sure it's kind of like you're saying, you never keep learning, but that was a thing where once you start being in touch with other productions, and maybe sometimes the problems with studios is the different departments are not in talking to one another, so they don't even know that they're doing things wrong. But as you work with those, and you see how it goes through a production, like, oh, okay, maybe I should describe that a little better. And
and I think, but that's also on the studio and also on the teams. I think it's really hard right now because there needs to be more of a crossover, and what happens is, a lot of people come out of school, they want to work on their one discipline, and then they don't know the rest of the pipeline or the production. And again, luckily for me, starting for better or for worse, when I did, I was able to see and understand a lot more of the pipeline and figure out that if I do this, there'll be a ramification for that. And I think it's really important if studios are helping. Like ILM at the beginning, like I was saying, when I was younger, it's still a great studio in that way that I can go and talk with animation. I can talk with rigging. I don't feel like there's any red tape for me, that I can't do that. And I think it's really important. And then vice versa, there needs to be a back and forth that, flagging things and doing all this stuff. But you can only learn that on the production floor. School can't teach that.
And if it is encouraged, right? And that's why you're saying the culture is so huge. I never asked you, why you've done a lot of things. You even did storyboarding outside of all the CG things you did. How did you settle, or why did you settle on texturing? It's interesting. I think for me, I got really tired of modeling because but now I'm more back into it, but it's more on, not for production, it's like ZBrush, like digital sculpting tools, like anything. And then even my setup in ZBrush, like if some of the work I do, it's what I would do in clay. So obviously it's not as detailed as some of these amazing artists that they're doing the craziest stuff. I'm just kind of, again, doing what I love to do. And the way my brushes are set up in ZBrush is very much how I would do it in clay or in Sculpey. So I'm just kind of basing on that. So I still like the whole creation process from concept. Like I just love doing concept illustration, creature, and then doing the textures. But to go back to your point, in production art, I just got really tired of working on gray models, and I really, because I primarily came from a self-taught illustration background, and then slowly got into painting and all this types of stuff, and tried to get better at it. Texturing seemed like the best thing because it involved lighting. So I got to do shot lighting. I get to do the understanding of materials and how things get put together. Because I knew I could always go back and model and create a creature from a model. Those skills are there. I mean, I'm also, the other thing too, man, some of the modelers I work with, they're so freaking fast. Oh my God. I am like, they got all the fancy tools and buttons.
Oh, I'm like a sloth compared to and the stuff they do is amazing. So for me, I really got fascinated with texture. I've always just loved texture. I've loved lighting. And I just wanted to get better at it. Like lighting and texture and materials just makes or breaks for me. Like, it's great. And I think that, again, I wanted to find something within the production field that would roll back to my own work. And I think that was the only thing that would really do it, because at the end of the day, I mean, now it's different because we have Photoshop and everything like that too. But at the end of the day, I don't want to go back on the computer if I don't have to. I want to be able to sketch. I want to be able to pull out, my watercolors, and you doing your watercolors at work has inspired me. I have my little watercolor set, and it's my stuff is god awful, but it's still fun, right? Like again, it goes back to what you're saying. Like, who am I? I'm not dressing to impress. I'm just trying to get better at what I do, and create these little things and learn and do all that type of stuff. So it's
but
fun.
I think it's so cool that you got to try so many different types of art, and when you get really good at one thing and then you do a switch to another one, you realize how long it takes to really get good at a skill. Man, that's so humbling, because but it seems like you've gotten really good at many skills, like you're saying, from modeling to texturing to I don't know if you do a lot of, but man, it's tough.
It's tough. I think I'm still scratching the surface, man. And I think that's the thing too, because some of these artists that are coming up now, or artists that are still around, they blow me out of the water. So I can't compete with that, right? Like I can't, like they're that good. But I think it's, again, I'm fortunate enough that I'm at a point in my career that I'm just kind of doing my own thing. And I don't, like like you're saying, I don't really give a shit when I'm doing my own stuff. If people like it, they like it, you know, whatever. And then luckily I'm okay enough at my job that I'm at.
You're so humble. But maybe you don't need to compete, though. That's one thing I always wonder. Even, you know, the fact that you just mentioned that your modeling tools are very mimicking traditional tool. And I've noticed that even, for example, like, look how popular all the stop motion films are. There's a reason. I think it's because it's got that hand, like, realistic feel. And the fact that you're treating your digital as traditional, I have a lot of appreciation for that. I think a lot of artists do. And it's funny how a lot of CG is trying to be traditional because that imperfection and that feel is so valuable.
Well, that's why toon shading is making a big comeback too. So like even look at like that, it looks unbelievable, that Into the Spider-Verse that's coming out. But it just like I loved it because it feels the way the animation's done. I know there's a lot done in comp to bring those kind of styles and that kind of comic booky feel, but it has a stop motion feel to it with the way they're doing their timing with the animation. And looks like they removed motion blur, so it has it's just a different feel, right? And it looks mind-blowing, man.
Can't wait for that. But that's why I think, I don't know, man. Personally, sometimes like the most detailed, craziest model that doesn't excite me as much as one of those. I don't know if you've seen those. They did black and white Batman maquette series.
Yeah.
Like that stuff is way cooler.
I like it. Well, that's the thing is in the visual effects industry, you know, you have a lot of artists that get really off on how to make it so realistic, so technical.
Nerding out.
I mean, it gets crazy. And for me, I'm not that type of person.
Same.
Like I'll do it, but I wanna, like, if I'm gonna bring realistic skin into something, I want it on a creature. I don't want it on a digital human. And I think that's great. Like everybody has their place and they love to do it. And again, and like you said, I think competing is the wrong word because I'm not competing but we have artists at ILM that blow me out of the water with how look dev artists and supervisors and artists that are just making it look better than it's ever looked, and that is awesome. And we need that. It's just it's not for me.
Yeah.
So,
but it's cool that you do know what you want, and I often go back to this. I think on this podcast in general, because often my question is one is like knowing yourself and then knowing where to go. I think those are. I think they're difficult, lifelong tasks, and I guess they often change. But it seems like it's when you know what it is you want, you get to be like your life gets simplified, and you get to be really good at it. Because the older you get, the life gets more complicated. So that simplicity in your just like direction and your goals, and that's so. If you're talking about people, I imagine who are really good at your work, it's probably because that's they realize that's the only that's the thing they want to be good at. And it's probably the thing they're spending most of their time on, and naturally, right, they're getting good. Is just, and when we talk about social media, it's probably still, and I know we talk about it more now, but it's often forgotten that when you see something really good, it's probably because those people, that's all they do.
And exactly. And that's the thing. It's just, again, there's so much, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's the thing. And again, if somebody knows what they want to do and that's their kind of little niche and they like it, all the power to them. But like for myself, it's just I'm never satisfied. Like I'm never satisfied. Like as you know, with artwork, you do a piece and you're happy for a day, or I always love the potential of what it will be. I'm not usually ever happy with the final result, but in that moment of creating it, I'm the happiest I could ever be.
You're loving the process. Yeah. It's huge.
It's the best, right? Yeah. And that search to always, searching for more. Like every great artist that I've loved has gone through all their different transitional periods and done different things, and I think it's just, again, I'm trying to take a step back from the technical. Like I'm trying to take a step back, get a little bit more analog. Like I said, I think Instagram's really cool. I'm on it. I like it, but I'm not on Facebook or anything like that. Yeah. But I think it's really great because it's for me too. Like some of the people that I like on Instagram are bands. Like I just find these really cool bands, and you're like, shit,
that's awesome.
And photographers and other artists that.
Well, you're just like a well-rounded human being. That's really nice and refreshing. But it seems like you have a pretty healthy relationship with that way of always wanting to be better. But it doesn't seem like it doesn't go dark or bad. It seems like you want to be better, but you're not like bashing yourself for not
Yeah,
being
no,
there. Because I feel like, I don't
yeah.
know about you, I see a lot of artists, and sometimes including myself, where you just, like, it's an unhealthy relationship
Yeah.
with not being what you want to be. And
Yeah.
I think the realization of that you'll never get there is probably a better one.
Yeah, I mean, this year too I think was hard for me a bit, because I was
Really?
definitely questioning a lot
Yeah.
on my career, and trying to get to that end game of, wanting to do more of my stuff, and kids books, and
Mhm.
animation shorts, and just things in general, t-shirts and all that kind of fun stuff, band posters and things. But yeah, I mean, I think you always go through those ups and downs, and I think as long as you have a few people that are in your corner, like for myself, a couple friends, and again, my kids and my wife, and I think if you have that, it helps a lot. And again, it's hard to, like, being in a relationship where, whether you do or don't have kids, but if you're in a relationship and your partner is a working professional as well, it's huge. But I mean, thank goodness for it, because when we're in Toronto, if I was an accountant, and my wife was going to school in interior design, she was at Ryerson. Those hours were crazy. I've never seen anything like it. But
Wow.
if I wasn't an artist, we wouldn't be together, because she was like at school till 3 a.m, but I was up drawing till 3 a.m, right?
You
So
get each other. You're on the same
yeah,
level.
yeah, and we're different. And I mean, when we were younger, we used to get into huge debates about postmodernism over the dinner. You'd go out for restaurants, and then people would be arguing about the stuff, and then you'd look over at us, and we'd be arguing about postmodernism, which was always fun.
That's
And
awesome.
I thought I
Yeah.
knew so much, but then she also has an art
Yeah.
degree, so she would always trump me on
Oh,
everything, because
man.
it's just
That's not
I
fair.
couldn't even compete.
That's what I think about digital, like this kind of industry education. It's kind of unfortunate and fortunate at the same time. I mean, you get a job sooner, but at the same time, you're given the basics, and you don't scratch the surface of any kind of art that comes before it. It seems
Yeah.
like there's so much focus on just like, here's the skills you need to get a job. Good
Yeah.
luck. But man, that stuff is so valuable. And I
Yeah,
guess you
that's
have
what
to-
I don't like either. Like, I
Yeah.
wish there was more. There'd be more about that. Like, not. And again, maybe that goes back to the same thing. When I was in classic animation school, that's all they adhere to. Here are the principles. This is how you get a job. Instead of like, here's all this stuff. Like, why isn't there a course just dedicated to looking at Rembrandt, looking at like, Norman Rockwell? Like, why? Or even go further back or more forward, or Alphonse Mucha is one of my favorite artists
Same.
of all time. Like, that guy, unbelievable. There wouldn't be comic books if it wasn't for him. Like, it's just like incredible.
It goes back to probably money,
Yeah.
right? It's why.
Yeah.
That's why you don't. And that's why often you got to self-initiate and just teach yourself. It's
I think that's the
unfortunate.
thing. That's a good term, self-initiation, because you
Yeah.
really. I think the thing is too, like, a lot of times, I find you have to be proactive. There's a lot of people that are reactive, and
Mhm.
again, it's like whatever you like. If you're happy in your complacency and you want to do that, then own that.
Yeah.
But don't complain.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if that's what you want to be, that's cool. But if you want to be proactive, then go for it. There's no shame in
Mhm.
what is it, like, again, like, I mean, it's been said a million times before me, but like, what are they going to say? No, they're not going to.
Yeah.
It's fine. And then, your ego gets humbled and you build up again. And I mean, we all got to fail copious amounts of times to get better. So
That I had Priscilla Yu on the podcast before, but that's one thing I feel like she was talking about, how writing notes to yourself and quotes, and sometimes these things, they're so easy to forget.
Yeah.
Kind of what you're talking about, that attitude of just do it, man. Like,
Yeah.
I guess sometimes you just kind of end up stopping yourself from doing it.
And I mean, I can say that. I mean, I'm sitting here talking with you, and I can say that, but putting into action, I'm bad at it too, right? So it's it's still.
You push yourself, and I guess because it's never going to feel good. It's
Yeah.
just the reality of it's always going to suck. Dude, I have so many questions. So fun to talk to you. What do you look for in your work now than compared to what you looked for 10 years ago, or earlier? Have you noticed a big change in yourself for why you appreciate projects?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's always been about the team, but more than ever, it's been about the team. I think, especially when you're starting out, you're kind of looking for those projects to prove yourself, and to also have a really cool demo tape, like in the visual effects or the animation. Like, I get it. It's hard, and you're always aspiring because you want to work on the asset that will will do that, and you want to work on those things. But now it's like I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to work on enough, and now I hope I'm a little bit better at just accepting, what comes down the pipe, because you're going to get projects that are crappy, and you're going to get projects that you're going to love, and then you're going to work on projects that you love, and you're not going to be able to work on any of the things you want to work on. So, but I think it really, we all know you stay at a studio or you stay at wherever you are employment wise because of the people that are around you. It really is about the people and about the team, and I think that's where I would still have a hard time being completely freelance by myself without being around other people to push me. With work too, you look over at somebody else's desk and you see what they're doing, and you're like, holy crap, that's really good. And then you start to sweat a little bit because you're like, oh man, I don't know.
I know that feeling, but it's inspiring. It's a healthy, because the alternative sucks. Like the alternative is just to sit comfortable and don't push yourself, right? So
yeah, I'm the best. I'm like, no. There's always somebody better, man.
I like that on your website that you wrote, there's something, I got a quote here. Raine has traveled around the world honing his art on both the professional and personal levels. And I like that you wrote personal levels. Yeah. And I think you mentioned briefly the children's books you're working on. Is there, I guess maybe, do you want to chat a little bit about, I guess, what you've been working on the personal level and why children's books specifically?
I procrastinated so long on this one book, and I realized that I'm trying to get it out. I've been working on a couple of them since Weta, and even at Pixar, people are like, when is it coming out? And now it's just like, it's taking so long.
The industry is stopping you from making your own work.
I know. Well, it's also like I look back on it and it wasn't quite there. So I'm just trying to finish it up, and then I realized I'm just getting it out for free. It's just digital. I'm going to get it out because everything, at some point maybe it can make some money, but I was talking with friends and it's like, well, what are you selling it for? And really, I'd rather just get it out there, because for me, like, I love video games, but there's so much free to play video games. Why not have free to play or free to read books, right? Like, and just get out there, and I'd like to see feedback. Like, it's better to just get it out there and see what happens. Like, like we're talking about, like, I'm not worried. I'm not a starving artist right now, so at least I have that opportunity that I can kind of not be so uptight about doing it. But I love the stories, like young readers and all that stuff too. And I think what I'd love to do is just work closer with, like, I wrote it as well, and I'm more a conceptual kind of idea guy. So, I have a couple of friends that are writers, and I'd love to work with writers, because some of the ideas, like there's one young reader book that I wanted to do that was, would be something kids would read before Harry Potter, but it's a kind of like to deal with death and some kind of big topics, but other things. And then, one of them I've always been wanting to do, the Toy You Knew Too Much, what I want to do a Hitchcockian take on this toy that's, murder mystery type of thing. But, and then, one that's based on my son, and I want to do another one that's based on my daughter, and then also too, like, I love graphics on t-shirts, so I've been trying to put together a series that I would do, so that's other stuff that I'm just personal,
ambitious.
Just want to, like, I just want to kind of get some different things out there, and if time permits to, I'd love to get back to some sculpture stuff. I love sculpting.
I know you said you kind of talked about the thinking of the end game, end plan. You said
the end game. Yeah.
What do you, because you said the 363? Do you think it's reality? Can you make it a reality? I know we're living in Vancouver.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Pricey. This city is crazy. Yeah.
But
I don't know.
I imagine like having a family here is probably a really good place. Like, actually, I had a question written down. Is it why you've traveled so much? And I really I always appreciate people who have traveled, because I think it gives you different perspectives. But why Vancouver, and why? And then why Vancouver?
Well, just born and raised here, but I love Vancouver. I keep coming back. I remember we're at Mainframe, and we're like, one day Vancouver's they're gonna do it. Ever since Expo 86 and that, they're gonna do it with it. Now look at Vancouver now, but of course it's all out of whack with the price point and all that stuff. That's another story. But I think it's also family. So when we went to New Zealand, my son was 8 months, and we went there, and then my daughter was born in New Zealand. And then after that, and then Weta, at that time, it was still a lot of hours, and I was just like, you know what? We just we need to go back. We need to take a break. And we need to go back because New Zealand's amazing. Like Australia and New Zealand are two of my favorite places. Like if I was to actually live, those would be places. So I think a big drawback was, yes, there's a lot going on here. It's a wonderful city. I think if our families lived in Toronto, I would still be in New Zealand. I wouldn't go there. Okay. I had enough after 4 years there. Good people there, and it's great, but not for me. But yeah, it was just, there's a lot going on here too. I mean, I miss the surfing. I still do my surf trips to Tofino and down into California and stuff, but it's still not enough. But I think for our family, and now with the kids being older and school systems and all that type of stuff, and just the people here are pretty good. I mean, I've met a lot of good people, and yeah, that was primarily, it was mostly, I think family was a draw, and obviously the work was here, but at the same time, New Zealand was brilliant. It was such a nice place. It was very similar to Vancouver, though.
I have a feeling you're going to go back.
Yeah. Well, there's an area in Australia, like North Sydney, called Avalon, that I would just...
It's a cool name.
I'd just go there and just paint and surf.
But do you think that can be a reality? Like, do you see that possible in your life?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think you know, if you've been given enough opportunities, you know, I think heaven, your version of heaven can be achieved while you're, you know, in your life.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's going back to simplicity. Like, I don't need a Maserati. I just want a beautiful place that I can go surfing and do my artwork and hang out with people that I enjoy.
Oh, it's probably more healthy too.
Yeah, and that's like that's for me. But yeah, I think it can be. I think it's a struggle though. It's like it's an ongoing process of how is this going to work. Another thing that I would love to do too is, you know, we always get the shakes for the traveling. You know, where you can't do it quite as much.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would love to go do a sabbatical now that we finally own a house from a few years ago, and we have tenants, and that works out. But I would love to even just go for a year, just to like Sweden or
awesome.
Back to Australia or something, and take the kids and give them that education as well. And then just come back, and at least when we come back to the same house, so then they can still see the same friends. It was that idea of constantly moving around and them always not necessarily having their friends anymore. So if you just treat it like, okay, we're going to do this for a year.
We're going to come back.
We're going to come back, and we're going to a really cool place and get to do some work and, you know, see what happens.
It sounds really awesome that you also, like, you found someone who it seems like matches you in the interest for travel and art. Like your wife, like you guys, I mean, I haven't met her, but like even like you're saying the way you kind of met and then you travel.
Oh yeah, she's
like,
amazing.
You share these values, and it's great because it seems like you can do these things, right? Like, and
well, I mean, she's my grounding too. Like I would be I'd be so weirdly aloof if I think back before I knew her. So, oh my God. But no, it's worked out really well. But I mean, as you know, relationships, it's ups and downs, man.
And it's work.
It's a lot of work, but it's good. I mean, there's nobody else. I mean, we've been together. Next year will be 20 years we've been together, so it's crazy.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
That's awesome.
Not married 20 years, but together 20 years.
Yeah. Really cool. Damn, we're slowly running out of time. I like this conversation because it just flew, man. You're just like, you're just full of awesome information. Just
maybe I was doing a little too much talking, but that's
no. Well, you're here to talk, man. I love it. Okay, I'll have a couple more questions. We'll have to wrap up soon. Is there anything you wanted to chat about? Like, as far like I know we spoke about this before, where, you know, is there anything that could be valuable for other artists to listen to? Because I mean, we covered a lot, and honestly, I mean, I think we could just keep going for hours. It's just I don't know if you want to throw something out there, but if not, I got more questions to throw your way.
No, I think we're covering it.
Yeah.
Like for me, I think it's just, I mean, the big thing for young artists is just don't be discouraged. Just keep at it, but be able to take the constructive criticism and run with it. And again, also be able to edit. Like, you're going to get critique from many different people. You know, just, you know, edit that and even trust the people that some of the people don't necessarily take it from everybody, right? You know, it's like, as much as we love our moms are not the greatest critic of our work, right? So it's like, will anybody else like this other than my mother, right? So it's that type of stuff, and you know, just keep at it and take the criticism and be able to run it, and then also be able to. So many people don't know how to edit, edit their work too. Like you got to edit your work, and then
You gotta be very honest with yourself, and it's hard.
yeah, it's very hard. Yeah. And the thing is too, like a lot of the stuff, like I know fan art's really big, and it's fine if you do fan art, but if you're gonna show work, don't make it all fan art, man. Like, you know, that's cool. You want to do a couple fan art pieces, but also have some original, because that like original work, whether it be CG or 2D or whatever, it really shows that you're thinking and you're putting into the. Obviously, it can be a combination of taking from other ideas, but if all you're doing is fan art, it's not. Yeah, it shows that you have a skill set, but it doesn't show. Like for me personally, I always look for that in artists, that they have a real creative push to do their own stuff, to go a little bit above and beyond, and not just do another version of Thanos, right? Like that's great, cool, but
because that's what will be
been
required
done.
from you to be innovative, right? Like you have to show that you are a thinker rather than just a tool. And I guess sometimes you need tools, but ideally it's more fun to work with people who are just innovative in some sort of way.
Yeah, because they'll tend to think outside the box, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then the same thing, like just because like I think we have that camaraderie even at work is just because one person is a lead or a soup and the other person's an artist, it doesn't matter. That artist should still feel free to come to the supervisor and point out things on their work that isn't hitting it, or give suggestions, or like I constantly pull other artists over and go, what do you think? You know, and I hope they're truthful and not just go, that looks great, okay, I'm gonna go sit down. But they're actually gonna, you know, be like, oh, that's cool, but that doesn't quite look like, because you're gonna get called out eventually, man. Like I have soups that they're looking at something and then they pinpoint on this little thing that probably nobody ever see, and they're like, that looks too plastic when it should be skin, and you're like, okay, I'll go back and I'll fix it. But, you know, and you learn tricks. Like I find, if you share, I think it's about sharing too. Like it's so much of it sharing. Artists, they show me so many cool, and it makes me better artist, and it doesn't take away from them, and it doesn't mean that they're not going to have a job tomorrow.
Of course.
And I think that's the big thing. It's when people get so hoardy on like, well, I have this, and that's the worst too, is when people are starting out and I'm sure you get this a lot too, and they're just like, well, what brush do you use? And it's like, it's not about the brush. It's
like
not about
questions.
the package.
Yeah, when you're seeing especially online, just people asking, oh man, come on. You're clearly
it's
pretty
not
green.
this brush.
It's
It's you know, you can have one default brush out of Photoshop and totally make a really nice piece. Like it has nothing to do with
People
that.
make really cool stuff with graphite. You know,
Yeah,
you don't need anything else. Yeah,
exactly.
What's your what has been your has been your biggest failure?
Oh shit!
I know I'm throwing big questions at the end. It's kind of how I do it.
Wow. I don't know, man. Personally,
Whatever you want. It's whatever you want. Yeah, I don't know. I know it's.
I don't know. My biggest failure, I guess, is still not being the artist I want to be. I don't know. Maybe that's.
Damn, but it's a lifelong.
It's a lifelong. It never ends.
Being really
I'm trying to think if there's something that I. Again, it's like it's such a team effort that my own personal like projects that I've worked on. I don't know, man. I might have to come back with you on that.
No,
I think
no worries. Yeah, I know it's a, and I feel like.
I mean, there's films that failed, and there's things that.
But that's not your failure. I don't think. Yeah,
I think. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's an overall failure. There's times that I've failed on the production and then been able to do something else and recoup. And I think over these longer projects, you fail for sure.
Yeah.
And then you able to, you know, have your team or whoever or yourself and build yourself back up. But
no worries.
I mean, that's a good one.
What advice would you give yourself, let's say, before you got into Mainframe?
Oh, before I got into Mainframe.
Yeah, like could basically just advice to your younger self.
Shit, like a looper moment.
Exactly that.
I think just calm down.
Really?
Take it slow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it really is a marathon. I think youth too. Like, I mean, I still do even my own work, but don't get so tunnel vision, and be more open to people, even if they aren't artists. I think when you start out, that you don't necessarily take critique from people that aren't artists, and you hold them in such high regard. Like, I remember it was amazing. Like, there's a studio I worked for in Toronto, Red Rover, and they were really good at their 2D, and we were doing 3D commercials as well. And we were working on a short for Bravo Fact back in the day, and it was like our first thing, and we're doing this short, and I was luckily to be part of it, and it was a great little team. And this is back in the day of like, trying to do cloth for the first time in 3D Max, and trying to learn new types of lighting, and they're running this sim on this cloth, and the owner of the company, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but what he would do is if something didn't look right, he would get the cleaning lady, who was this cute little old Asian woman who didn't speak a lot of English, and come in and just be like, what do you think of this? And just get her opinion. And she was always right. She's like,
awesome.
she's like, no, looks too much like rubber. And you're like, oh yeah, no, you're right. You're totally, thank you. And just like, okay, and off she goes. But it was great. Like, it's getting that kind of, feedback from like my kids too. When I was working on the piece with, the piece for my son, and then my daughter comes up and she's like, my son Kai, he's like, his eyebrows are too light. His eyebrows aren't that blonde anymore. I'm like, oh, you're right. And then I darkened them in and actually made the piece center on his eyes a little bit better. Wow. So it's just like, just being open to that type of stuff is great.
That's a really good takeaway. That's awesome. Let's see. What should I throw your last one? I don't know. Do you actually no? What's your happy place? I have a feeling I know where this is gonna go. I think, like, again, going back, I think just in the moment of creating the artwork, surfing. Why is surfing playing such a big role? Because I've never surfed, and I'm curious, because I've noticed this kind of I've noticed people who do surf, it's huge.
Oh
too.
Man, it changed my life. I think it's just, I think it centers you. It's there's nothing like it. Like it's the hardest. Like, I've done a lot of physical activities in my life, from snowboarding, skateboarding all my life, rock climbing, all that stuff. But surfing is the most physically demanding, hardest activity I've ever done. But what it does is it brings a sense of clarity and a sense of, and I mean, I'll try not to go too mumbo jumbo spiritual stuff, but it does bring you to center, and it simplified my life. I think it came to me at a point where I was overcomplicating my life when it didn't need to be, and then as soon as I centered it back to just art, surf, and friends and family, then it really kind of brought me back to center. And I think too, on that, going back to like how this year was, I mean, every year good and bad, but this year I kind of came to an understanding of myself that I was kind of going through a bit of a dark period. And what I started to do is I started to figure out moments during the day that in that moment, whether it's 5 minutes or 30 seconds, there's nowhere else I would rather be or what I would rather be doing. And whether that is, drawing with my daughter, or laughing at something my son did, or doing something, and just in that little moment, and then trying to build on those moments and see how many of those moments I can get in a day, and then start to, and again, that helps with the balance too, because whenever you go through those waves, I find it really helps, because sometimes it's like, this is it. This is like, before I came to the talk, I was out in the backyard kicking the soccer ball around with my son, and I'm like, this is great. Before I go, we have this,
awesome.
we have this bit of time, and there's nothing else I'd rather do. Yes, I could be drawing, and again, going back to that, I should be working on this piece, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, is this gonna make me better all around? And that drawing's not gonna go anywhere. And yes, I do believe in the sense that 1 day away from the art, you notice the difference. 2 days away from the art, everybody notices the difference. But there still has to be some sort of balance and understanding. And even I find I'm better for it taking that break this summer and not doing as much artwork, because coming back to it and getting excited about it again, and doing some fun pieces, and really not caring. It's like, I know it's off, and I'll trust a couple people I'll show it to, and they might pick up on something that I didn't, and then I'll work on it. But it's not like I'm trying to just, be the number one, Instagram dude on the planet. Like, it's not where I'm at. So, man,
I love it. You have so much perspective. It's so refreshing to talk to you, and I really hope we keep this going. I'll just need you to come back, and I think because I feel like we got your origin story, but I think we could just dip into all the kind of other art.
The part two.
I'd
love
Raine,
to.
Thank you so much. I didn't do a good job of doing the intro here, because Raine, Raine Anderson, and if you want to look up his art, we got Raine Anderson art on Instagram. raineanderson.wordpress.com, I think. And then
Yeah, I need to update that. I have my Push the Sky
Push the Sky,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, which is just more the children's driven. I realized that I had to kind of separate if I'm going to show again Instagram. That's what I like. It's like a great portfolio, a really quick portfolio. But yeah, I had to break them up because I started to do like kind of kiddie stuff, and then I was doing a little bit more mature stuff, and I'm like, you know, it's nice to keep it separate. So.
Yeah, but I like that you do it all. I get very inspired, and I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it was great.
And I also didn't say that Raine, freaking badass person here, worked from everything from Star Wars to Black Panther to X-Men. You basically, most movies you've seen, this guy has touched, and it's just, I'm very honored to know you and have you as a friend, and the fact that you came on here. Dude, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And I think I'll have to unfortunately wrap it up here. I realized that I'm pretty sure this is actually the last show of the year, so episode 21. You're kicking off 2018, and
nice.
This has been for me a kind of really enjoyable year, and just doing this, I've been learning. I hope if you're listening, I appreciate you and the fact that you tune in and support. I guess I'm very lucky to be able to do this, and I hope I can keep going. And
well, I'm glad you're doing it, though. It's important. It's
thanks,
important for
man.
the community. I appreciate it. It's fantastic.
Thanks, and thanks for joining. I think I'm off to Brazil for a couple of weeks at the end of this year, and I'll be back, and we'll just get a lot of, just going to keep getting all the good artists in here. I'm hoping that Raine is going to come back to us.
I'd love
to. Keep going this thing. Dude, thank you so much.
Yeah, my
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for listening. If you want to learn more about Creative Theory Podcast, you know where to find me. Instagram, Facebook, and all that. Next year, I got to do a little bigger push for how to promote this thing. So if you want to say hi or click 5 stars on iTunes, I think that's how it works. Just do something. Help me out, and we'll keep this thing going. Anyways, thank you so much, and see you next year. Bye-bye.
Bye.